A huge victory for Britain and British people as this government, Mark Harper, specifically Transport Secretary, has decided to put an end to the low traffic neighborhoods. So net zero as a program introduced so many ideas, so many restrictions and policies and taxes. One of them is these LTNs, low traffic neighborhoods, where they block certain roads in the name of, well, to help with both air pollution and traffic. Ironically, it's caused more traffic elsewhere and air pollution, but that's completely nonsensical. It's unpopular. There have been protests across the country. People are not obeying, and this government has been under a lot of pressure. So whilst these things have been done by local authorities, the consent came from central government. Yeah, this so-called conservative government gave consent to the wider net zero agenda. They've been funding local councils to do this. Now there is a backlash. Now, finally, it's not just words, it's actually been done. It's official that Mark Harper, Transport Secretary, who was also one of the key anti-lockdown MPs during the 2010-2021 days, he's announced that, he said, as a Transport Secretary and a Conservative, I believe in giving people more choice on how to travel, not banning cars from places. That's why I've stopped funding for any new LTNs. So, clearly, there was a battle with the Treasury and others, and Mark Harper has won that battle, so it's quite impressive. Well done. Well done, Mark Harper. But let's not fully celebrate just yet, because there's always a but with these sort of things. The existing LTNs are still in place, so no new LTNs will be created. The program is now ended, but the existing ones still in place, and now it's the job of the local authorities to cancel them. Central government can't force them. That's the problem. They have stopped the funding, so eventually they will end. But right now, we still have a big battle. Mark Harper said that I have put an end to government funding for projects that are about banning cars or making it difficult for motorists. That's good. He also said, because a lot of local residents have been completely kicking off about this, ordinary people out there, he said, a number of them were implemented during the pandemic, and he was against the lockdown days himself. And there was, because of that, a lack of consultation. That is a very good point, because, life was on pause, so they just did whatever they wanted. Harper said, so I certainly think local authorities ought to reflect on whether the schemes that they are implemented actually do have public support in their areas. For local authorities who have got schemes that weren't popular, were very controversial and aren't very well supported, then it would probably be wise for them to look at them again. Now, what I predict right now is that there have been a lot of local authorities and councillors who came and said before, when you protested against them, they said, well, the central government wants this. Central government gave us consent. They gave us the green light, so complain to them. They were shifting the blame. Now that we have the Transport Secretary confirming that it's done from central government, they withdrew their efforts and the funding. Now those councils are going to be forced to make a U-turn. So that's not all the councils, that's a lot of the councils. There are enough local authorities, especially when it comes to Oxfordshire, the rainbow coalition of the Lib Dem, Labour, Green Nutters. Those guys, they don't really care if the central government says yes or no. They're going to continue to, well, they can't really expand it, but they can keep the existing ones. And this is now our job and local residents to fight against the local authorities, the local tyranny, without any public consent. Mick Lynch is not happy about any of this. Mick Lynch is now also calling for more progressivism as he prepares to fight Mark Harper. So I'm not really sure what the priorities for Mick Lynch at this point, because he claims to be on the side of the working people, right? He's literally one of the top trade union leaders and RNT. None of the actions from these guys actually help the local people, local workers, and people with small businesses and anybody else. It's just completely a political game. On the one hand, you got the right-wing establishment being completely incompetent and complacent about various issues. And on the other hand, we had George Osborne, for example, cutting frontline services during the austerity days. Then you have the political left being completely nuttery. And they claim to care about working classes, but they really don't. They want higher taxes, they want more progressivism, more woke, more net zero. How is that going to help anybody? It's completely nonsensical. Now, Mark Harper also has a different idea as well, which is quite interesting. I don't really have a problem with this. We've seen examples in Japan he actually separately revealed that he wants his ordered officials in his department to see how the UK can basically be like Japan, because in Japan they create shopping centers essentially in train stations to help draw people back to rail network and to attract new investment. That's probably a good idea, as long as it's not some sort of mandated with high taxes and more restrictions. If there is space with certain train stations, and if it is again with the consent of the local people, then it will be good to make these areas also attractive, as long as it's not at the cost of banning cars, at the cost of forcing people to go to a train station. So it's good to modernize. It's good to have diversify your portfolio as a country. You could have all types of transport. You could have your car. You could have buses. You could have trains and everything else. As long as there are no restrictions, as long as there's more freedom and more options, I'm all for it. And people want it, that's fine. And then the same thing happens in Japan. We could learn from other countries sometimes. And if you're going to talk about Brexit Britain being global Britain, instead of actually surrendering to the globalist institutions, global Britain should mean that we should lead for the country, not for other countries. I don't want taxpayers' money to go be sent to dictatorships in the name of international aid. I want us to be global Britain, soft power to help our country, for our interests. Britain must come first. Anyway, let me know what you think. I'm Mahyar Tousi, and we are the media.